Welcome to Pivot Parenting, where we help parents of teens overcome regret and disappointment to find peace and connection in every situation. I'm Heather Frazier, your parenting expert. Journey with me to discover effective parenting tips, improve family relationships, and build a brighter future for your kids. Buckle up, things are about to get better. Hey, welcome to Pivot Parenting. I'm so excited to be here with you today. And I have a topic that I have been chewing on for a while. And the reason I've been chewing on it is because it keeps coming up in all my conversations with my clients. And it is this idea of safe parenting. Now, let me just explain for a second. And I want to also invite you. This is a big concept in the book that I wrote, Mom Got Jesus Wrong, Hallelujah. And I talk about this in a fictional setting in my book. And the mom in the book tries to keep her daughter religiously safe or saved. And she goes about it in all the wrong ways. And if you haven't pre-ordered your copy of Mom Got Jesus Wrong, Hallelujah, I invite you to go to my website or your favorite book retailer. We've got Bookshop, Amazon, Walmart, all the places. You can also just go to my website. I am offering fantastic bonuses. If you just want a copy for yourself, I have, I think, 5 or 6 bonuses. You get to join a private Facebook group so that we can talk all things book and Jesus. You can download my playlist, which I hand selected and created, and I totally love. I've got, I think, 3 or 4 songs per section of the book. I have downloadable art and all kinds of really fun things, including a book club guide. But if you want copies for a book club, 5 copies will get you enough for your book club. I also am selling 25, 50, and even 100 copies of my book, and all the way up to include private coaching with me, and also me flying out or driving to wherever you're at and doing a half-day in-person intensive conference to speak to your group or just you and your friends or family. There are some fantastic bonuses. I invite you to check those out on heatherfrazier.com. The publish date is in October, so we have plenty of time to do all of the fun things. And I am so excited for my book. And again, bringing it back full circle, I talk about how we try to create safety. And in religious settings, this is really common. Have you ever heard the phrase, no empty chairs? No empty chairs in heaven, meaning we have to save everyone because we don't want to be missing anyone. We don't want their chair to be empty. And this can cause a lot of pain and suffering. And we apply this paradigm into every other aspect as well, not just religiously. And here's what it can sound like. And we all do it, by the way, in our own special way and to our own degree. In our heads, it can sound like, I don't want them to be hurt by their friends, so I need to protect them. I don't want them to repeat my mistakes I made at their age, so I need to protect them. I just want them to be happy, which means I need to keep them safe. I should always know what to do or say to be a successful parent. And if I don't, then bad things can happen. If I don't do it or say it right, then maybe my teen won't want to be close to me. They won't confide in me. And then that will lead to more bad things. Essentially, our brain is telling us all these things that we need to keep our kids safe or else their future is doomed. And here's what it can sound like coming out of our mouth. It can sound like a sense of mistrust that feels rather ambiguous or shapeshifts, unspecific and fairly omnipresent. Have you ever had like a little cloud of fear following you around to do it perfectly? When you speak from that place, that is the mistrust coming out. It can sound like some version of, you need to do it my way, teenager. Otherwise, we are in danger. Or when your teen pushes back against your rule or way of wanting things done, you don't have a good reason beyond because I said so, or that's how it's always been done. And you don't want to hear their input around how maybe it could work differently. You just try to shut it down. Now, it can sound loving at times. I'm trying to protect you. I don't want you to fail. I just want you to be happy. That sounds very loving, but that is fear with like a powder dusting of love over the top of it to maybe make it go down a little sweeter, but it really doesn't. And it can also sound like having really rigid methods and habits, not listening to others' input of how things could be or structured or look. It's just my way or the highway. And there are two main types of fear that shape our parenting. And one is helpful and hardly ever necessary. And the other is unhelpful and generally affecting us somehow, tragically. Because, my friend, we have this part of our brain, and its one job is to scan for danger and to alert us of scary, dangerous things. Now, this part of our human brain has blessed and preserved us for millennia because the world has had times that are very, very scary, where you can't step outside of the cave without making sure that there's not a bear waiting to eat you, for example, right? We need to be mindful. We need to stay in the tribe. We need to protect ourselves and our children at all costs because they might fall into the river and drown. These are all things that have helped the human race to survive. This callous, harsh, there are things that try to kill us all the time, whether it's natural disaster, animals, illness. And so this part of our brain has preserved us, but now we live in such posh environments that it has to kind of make stuff up and make mountains out of molehills because that's its one and only job. And we can't turn this part of our brain off. However, we can learn to recognize it and work with it rather than allowing it to work against us. So, the first type of fear is a healthy, good fear. This is the kind of fear when we see strange men talking to our daughter. This happened to me recently in Thailand. We were shopping, and my daughters had walked outside of the store onto the street before me, and they're cute little teenage girls. And I walk out, and there's an adult man talking to them. I don't like that. I went right over, I stood between my daughters and this man, and I said, he was trying to hand them like a business card. I was like, no, we don't want it. Go away. My daughters were horrified. But I know far too much about the human trafficking industry that I wasn't about to be polite and risk their safety. And while I wasn't rude, I didn't yell or scream or make a huge scene. I made it very clear that he needed to turn around and walk away. And my daughters were horrified. And I kind of don't care because that's the type of fear that we need to have to actually protect our kids. So we can have this fear come up in everyday ways. We don't have to be traveling or out shopping. It can be if you're looking through their phone and somebody's asking them for explicit content. When you find drugs in their drawer. This fear is when you actually do need to take an action to potentially ensure safety. It feels very laser focused. It's spurred to action, or sometimes people shut down completely. This is a nervous system response. I went into fight when I saw this man talking to my daughters, and I went right over and was very assertive. People can also potentially shut down, but your gut is telling you that something isn't right, that you need to get to work, and it's usually something that your child isn't capable of taking care of themselves. They don't have the skill set, or they're physically or mentally unable. The second unhelpful and very revealing type of fear is when you see a text that says something rude about you. So you feel attacked, but it's actually not anything like somebody asking for explicit content. It's not a risk, but it's just not fun. Or when they get a bad grade, or they aren't studying exactly how you want them to, or think that they should, or they aren't keeping their room as tidy or doing their chores properly, when they sleep in too late and you think that their future is doomed. That's the unhelpful and very revealing type of fear. And what it reveals about us is our insecurities, our fears. And that's our business to clean up. Now, it doesn't mean we shouldn't have conversations about what we're finding with our child. Like if we see something where our child is like, yeah, my mom stinks, she's the worst, we can be like, hey, like, tell me about this. What's going on? This kind of wasn't my favorite thing to see, but I want to understand so that we can work on whatever you're experiencing. We can definitely have those conversations, but we don't want it to be thrown to such a point where we're calling up our sister and crying and playing the victim. And that is the type of fear that is unhelpful. And again, this unhelpful fear reveals things about ourselves that still need work. And this is how you spot this type of fear. It feels typically future-based, perfectionistic, outside of our realm of control. Your brain is giving you the worst-case scenario. And if you don't do the right thing right now, but then that shapeshifts and it always kind of changes. And we jump from one scary thing to another before it's really fully resolved. Like, for example, seeing a text for explicit content, well, I can address that specifically. But always fearing that I'm going to see random texts that actually aren't harmful, just not fun, then my brain is always going to be feeding me fear that I can never really address, if that makes sense. I have a very specific question that typically will guide you into how to tell the difference. Because as I've coached clients in this, that seems to be the biggest question for them. How do I know when my fear is helpful and when it's harmful or unhelpful? I have one question for you to ask yourself. So write this guy down. Does acting on this fear create goodness long term? Or am I acting in a way that is trying to satisfy my feeling better in this moment? Because, for example, me going up to that man in Thailand and saying, back it up, don't talk to my girls, that's not like me. I don't typically assert myself at strangers. So it actually didn't feel good in the moment to do. It didn't satisfy my desire to feel better in the moment. What would have satisfied me was just to be like, come on, girls, and just walk away. But maybe he would have followed us had I not been more assertive, right? And so does acting on this fear create goodness long term? Or am I acting in a way that is trying to satisfy my feeling better in the moment? So what that would look like is saying, how could you text that about me? I've done so much for you and you're so ungrateful and you don't care about my feelings and that was so rude and why couldn't you have just come to me? That's the parent trying to feel better. Can you feel the difference? Let me give you a few more details. Even though both fears might feel scary, quality, helpful fear does feel more grounded and purposeful. An unhelpful fear feels frantic, hopeless, running from fire to fire, never ending, bouncing between frenzy and throwing your hands up in the air. Helpful fear is typically more short-lived, and the other endures longer because it's not really founded in anything concrete. It's more of a mindset than a specific circumstantial feeling. And learning to tell the difference is really important. This is what I do with my clients, how to listen to yourself, how to dial in, and how to follow your own intuition and understand what you're feeling in the moment. Hi there. I just want to pause and let you know if you are struggling to make sense of your teen's behaviors, emotions are running wild, and you're looking to turn things around,
to have the family you dreamed of while rocking them to sleep, I would love to talk to you. I want to give you a special, powerful gift. 30 minutes with me, my friend. You'll walk away with more confidence, clarity, and understanding of what the issue is and your next best step in resolving any situation you bring to me. It's completely free. I love families and want to help yours be wildly happy and successful. Book this call by visiting my website, heatherfraser.com. Remember, Fraser is spelled with a Z-I in the middle. And don't worry, the link is also in the show notes. I look forward to meeting and helping you.
Let's talk about how your desire to feel safe in unhelpful fears actually feels unsafe to your teen. I have a few points to make here. The first one is that we are modeling for them that their locus of control is outside of themselves and that their job is to keep you happy rather than to find happiness and learn how to listen to their intuition. This is always terrifying to them because they know that they can't actually control your attitude or anything outside of them. And I use the term locus of control. I just want to define it. It refers to the extent to which people believe they have control over the events of their lives. Individuals with an internal locus of control believe that their actions and decisions influence outcomes, while those with an external locus of control attribute events to external factors like luck or fate or the behaviors and feelings of others. So I need to control mom because she is the moderator for how I feel and my outcomes. When we have an external locus of control, if that's what we're teaching to our children, they believe the external factors like other people or the universe control their lives, and this can lead to several disadvantages. It includes a lack of motivation because there's nothing they can help about it anyway. So a lot of teenagers will throw in the towel and they'll say, I can't make mom happy anyway, so I might as well stop trying. It fosters a difficulty in taking personal responsibility for actions because they don't see how they're impacting it. They only see how others and things, circumstances are. And it fosters a tendency to blame others or external circumstances for their failures, shortcomings, feelings, all of those things. And individuals with an external locus of control can struggle with self-praise or receiving compliments. It can feel powerless, and they're less likely to seek change or take advice. They feel like essentially they're at the mercy of others, which feels scary and unsafe. The second thing that this does to provide a lack of safety for them is that when we're so rigid and it has to be our way so that we can feel safe, we aren't listening to them, to their contributions. Now, I'm not saying that they should call all the shots. They shouldn't get to decide what their curfew is or phone rules. That's definitely something to be collaborative on, but we need to validate their perspective and own when they're right or accurate and be flexible to that. And that means we have to drop our ego. Let me share with you a story. This happened several years ago, and my son and I always fought about video games. He was in his prime video game playing days. And I had just returned to college and I was taking an English class and I had a term paper that I worked on the whole term. And I wanted to prove him wrong because I bought into the fearful story that video games will ruin your child. And so I hated video games. They're still not my favorite, but I really hated them. And I bought into the worst case scenario that my son was going to be 35 living in my basement, not with a job, just playing video games, because that's what our brain tells us when our kids love video games. And so I went to Google Scholar, which is a place where you can find peer-reviewed studies, articles, everything that has been published medically. It's a great resource without the spin that maybe a Facebook article could have. And so this is where I had to study for my paper and find articles and all of the things. And I was so excited to show my son that I had done the research and that I was right and that his video games were awful. Yeah, no, I got to eat my words because essentially what I found, and granted, this was a few years ago, so research could be different, was that I was just buying into my fears and that video games have no correlation to violent behaviors. Or causation rather, they can have benefit of playing up to 3 hours a day in community building, in reflexes, in intelligence. It plateaus around 3 hours. But if they're getting enough sleep, diet, exercise, if all those things are in place, then their brain can actually be enriched by up to 3 hours of video games a day. And this is a great example of how this unfounded fear that society was feeding me and I was gobbling up led to a lot of harm in the relationship with me and my son. And so we really want to do our research, and we want to not be so rigid, and we want to listen to our kids and to experts and then form opinions and then behave and parent out of an educated, wise space. The last thing that I want to hit on how safe parenting can feel unsafe to our kid is that it's not loving. It's actually self-serving. It's saying, I need you to stand in line in the way that I need you to so that I can feel better. And that is when they feel love that is conditionally placed or to be earned. And that is scary. Let's flip the script for a second. Would you want your spouse or a friend or your parent to withdraw love when you didn't do things their way so that they maintained their own happiness or peace of mind? All the time, it was their way or the highway. It doesn't feel good. No, none of us want a relationship like that. Your teen is no different. And to say that you're the parent and they're the child, if you're thinking that, please set up an appointment to talk to me. They are human just like you, and their worth and value is the same as yours, which is infinite. And they don't owe you that because they're the child. It makes sense that anybody on the receiving end of that type of treatment will withdraw. And when it is a parent, that relationship is expected to be a safe space and a loving space. And when that is not the case, your child will not feel safe. And when our kids don't feel safe, they tend to behave in riskier behaviors. Now, some of those can be very overt, like with drugs or speeding down the highway or all the risky behaviors. And it can also be very silent, which is, I just make everybody around me happy. And that sets them up for abusive relationships. It can feel really great as a parent because your kid is the best kid and just always does what you say. But that's a red flag. Our kids, we want them to push back on us from time to time because that shows that they're independently thinking and that it is safe for them to share how they think and feel with you. So why does overprotection and overreaction erode the trust that we try to build with our kids? And how can we reverse that? This is the last point I want to talk about. Unhelpful fear that we have as parents is attached to our ego. And if we dig deep enough, with enough honesty in those fears, and this is why I call them very revealing, it will always lead back to some version of, I have failed as a parent. We make it about us. Let me give you an example. Let's say I read a text about how my daughter thinks I'm awful. Why is this a problem? She's just venting and sharing her opinion. Well, I think she doesn't like me. So then we ask, so what? What does that mean? Well, I want her to like me. I also want others to know that I'm a good mom, and I want to feel like I'm a good mom. Why? Why is that important? Because I want my daughter and I to have a good relationship. That sounds loving and good, right? Because if we had a good relationship, then that would mean I'm successful and it would feel really good. So essentially, it's all about the mom wanting to feel good and successful, not about what's happening for her daughter and why she would say that, which is wholly unrelated to the mom's sense of self, but she's drawing it back to her sense of self. So, what do we do instead? I have 4 things that you can work on if this is you. First, number 1, pause. Very few things need you to jump in the exact moment. Breathe. Take an internal temp. Dial into your intuition. Are they helpful or harmful fears? Do we need to act right now? Are we very focused and it's very clear cut? Or is this kind of a pervasive fear that taints a lot of my day? Number 2, go down the rabbit hole. I invite you, when your brain is selling you worst case scenario, take the crazy train. Because my friend, safety is an illusion. A meteor could hit the world and we would all be dead. But good thing that we were really worried about telling our daughter that her text made us upset. Right? No, safety is an illusion. You can't keep your kids safe from everything. You just can't. Have rules. Be wise. But don't cave to irrational fears. We can say, hey, I see on your phone that you sent these images, my sweet child. Let's talk about this. And keep it about them rather than holy cow and melting into our own emotions. Now, we can certainly have our own emotions once we've done what our intuition is guiding us to do. We're not going to be robots. Sometimes I just have to go in the other room and freak out and cry after I have properly parented my child. But when we can go down the rabbit hole of worst case scenario, their life still isn't over. Their future is not completely doomed. We cannot foresee what will happen. Even if that off chance worst case scenario comes through, we've gone down the rabbit hole, I know that I'm still going to love my kid. That's what we want to bring it back to every single time. Can I still love my kid? The answer should always be yes. I promise you that your kid, they want to learn the hard way. They don't want to take your word for it. And these lessons, they are the most valuable lessons that you and I have learned and that they will learn. Because we all like to learn the hard way. It's just how we're wired. Your kid is supposed to feel awful, be stupid sometimes, and completely fail. And it's going to be okay even when it isn't. Because guess what? When we try to avoid all the negative experiences, especially if we try to get our kid to avoid all the negative experiences, we typically create more negative experiences than what would have originally been. So we need to show our brain how you can handle the worst case scenario on the off chance that it actually happens. And then the last and most important piece that I want you to do is pay attention to the specifics that the unhelpful fears are revealing to you. Because those are your insecurities and your wounds. And that is the work that you get to heal and get through. And I can help you with that. Book a call, pre-order my book. I go over a lot of this in my book through story, because a lot of times self-help books are kind of boring. And so I wrote it as a fiction. It's like a parable or a metaphor. You can do all of these things at my website, heatherfraser.com. And I have enjoyed being with you on this episode. I hope that you have found it helpful. If so, share it with your friends. Come back to it, re-listen, because I've dropped a lot of nuggets in this episode. And we'll talk to you next week.
Heather is the one, an expert in the field. She knows her